This is We the Sales Engineers podcast, show 253.
Welcome to We the SEs podcast, the show for sales engineers by sales engineers with your host, Ramsey Majaba.
What's up, SE Nation? Welcome back to another episode. I am your host, Ramsey Majaba, in case you didn't know that. And one thing you might not know, or you might know if you've been listening to the podcast long enough, is I am an introvert. Why am I saying this? Well, part of the struggles of the introvert is building relationships and working with people. Like, I am very good, and I'm sure a lot of introverts are very good as well at working in one-on-one situations. But when it comes to like being in a group, being on a call with like 10 different people from the customer side or from any side, maybe we're not as good as we could be, and we could get better. We could practice. It works. I've gotten better throughout my career, but you'll hear me talk today about like the mistake that I've done on the day when I was interviewing my guest. My guest is Brian Lewis, and he is the co-founder and CRO of Home Run. Home Run is the tool. 1 second. Yeah, so I just went off and did some research for 2 seconds. So he's a co-founder and CRO of Home Run Pre-Sales, which is the company, and Home Run is the software that they sell, the product that they sell. And one of the things that we wanted to talk about is building relationships and what can we do to build relationships. Some misconceptions that some SEs, especially introverted SEs, have about sales calls, and should we be asking questions. So it was a great conversation. I always enjoy talking to Brian. We've been talking for a year, and he's finally come to the podcast. So it was great to have him. And let me know what you think. We'll talk after the show. Hey, Brian. Nice to talk to you again. How are you doing?
Hello. I'm good. And yourself?
I am doing well. I'm excited to have you. We've been talking for a long time. I think we've talked for almost a year now.
Yeah.
I'm glad to finally have you on the podcast. And I told you your only job is to make me look good, right?
Sounds good.
You didn't agree on that, but now you're on record.
I will do my best.
It's going to be very hard. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing here.
Yeah. So I'm here because I'm in the pre-sales world. I have been in pre-sales, I guess since 2005. I came out of graduate school and started to go right into the sales world. I was the sales team for a long time, and that was sales and pre-sales. I learned a lot by doing over those years, and then moved into more formal pre-sales roles at a couple of different companies. And now I'm a co-founder and CRO of a pre-sales software company called Home Run Pre-Sales.
Founder and CRO.
Mm-hmm.
CEO. Is there a CEO yet, or is it you're everything? You just call yourself a CRO?
There is a CEO. I'm the CRO, so we've got a couple different roles.
Okay, so when people say CRO, I don't exactly know what that means.
Sure.
So can we dig into that a little bit? What is a CRO?
Yeah, at least in our case, it's everything related to revenue. The chief revenue officer. So that's going to be covering the sales side of things, which of course includes for us like the pre-sales motion as well, kind of rolled into one. That includes post-sales and customer success and support and making sure renewals and things like that. That includes for us our marketing, so lead generation, which ultimately, hopefully leads to leads and deals. So really touching everything related to revenue.
I look at legacy companies, like the company that I work for or that I've worked for in the past. There is no CRO. It's usually like a VP of sales or global VP of sales that does that. I don't know what the difference is. Like, is there a difference between a VP of sales and a CRO other than you're on the C-suite?
I don't know. No.
Oh, looks like Siri's trying to answer the question. Siri's trying to answer for us. I think that's just company structure. If you separate out sales versus post-sales, sometimes you'll see that VP of sales and like a VP of professional services or something along those lines. We just like it. We're a smaller team, so it's just easier to have sort of one umbrella that's looking at the whole thing, and also then allows us to think more about that customer journey from lead into sales cycle, into post sales, into long time customers, sort of have that full customer journey in mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the newer companies have that CRO
Yeah.
role. So it's interesting for someone who's only worked, like I worked at Alcatel Lucent and Spirent and Keysight. We don't have that, so it's just interesting that the new one. And
Yeah.
in case you're hearing my kids, they're right outside for some reason, even though I'm recording a podcast. Do you hear them?
I don't.
You don't. Okay, good. Then never mind. I'll cut that out. Okay, so what made you start Home Run? Like, you had a full-time job, stable, you're doing
Mhm.
well, and you decided to go into a not so stable startup. I'm assuming it could be stable, I'm not sure, but usually startups are
Yeah.
kind of a challenge. So what made you jump from full-time to startup life?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'd been in pre-sales for such a long time, right? So I kind of knew the job inside and out, felt really comfortable with it. But it actually came from I mean, this is like the founding story of Home Run, but my co-founder built out the first version of Home Run way back in like 2018, end of 2018. He'd been a software developer for 20 years, had moved into a sales engineering role, really enjoyed that, but missed coding, was looking for a problem in his daily life to say, okay, hey, I want to code something. What can I solve? What can I code? Looked at his own life as a sales engineer and said, this is a big old scribble mess. I got 10 different tools. Let me try and piece something together. So just as a side project, built out something to help him get through his day, but it worked really well. His coworkers wanted it. He brought it to me since I was in a pre-sales role at a different company and said, hey, I think this might be a thing. And we weren't sure what that would look like. So we spent the last, several years building out what then became Home Run. So it wasn't like an overnight jump into something. It was like all right, let's be methodical about this. Let's think about pre-sales. And so a couple of years later, it was now finally time. Product was ready, customer base was ready. And so I had been at the same company for a long time, and then that company got acquired. I stayed on to make sure that all the teams kind of gotten their appropriate homes, and then after that said, all right, now's the time. Home Run is finally ready for prime time, and then I moved over to do that full time last year.
Okay, and you said you were in the pre-sales world, as in you did that role.
Yeah.
Did you have a lot of connections in the pre-sales world, or is this basically I'm trying to get to now your industry shifted also? Like you were a pre-sales engineer or in pre-sales at a different industry than what you're in today. Like, how do you shift industries? I guess I'll leave it there.
Yeah, I mean, I think in this case, I didn't have a ton of connections in the pre-sales world because, going back, at that time, that was as the pre-sales community was still starting to form, right? So there weren't, tons of organizations and things like that and communities around pre-sales. So I knew how to do it, how to deliver demos and run POCs. I was great at that part of it. But then when we switched over, it was just mostly a matter of saying, hey, we've got this great solution that works really well for us, and we sort of want to share that with the world. Unfortunately, the pre-sales world was really evolving and starting to find its footing and maturing, and people wanted to know best practices and new tools. So it kind of worked out pretty well that the community developed right at the same time that Home Run was launching. And it's also fun to be in pre-sales and then also kind of selling to pre-sales. We all get why we're there. We all get what we're doing and how the process is going to go. So it just makes it a lot easier, actually.
And it is a different world, and you're getting into it. You have to develop now your relationships from scratch. And one of the major things that I find a lot of new sales engineers have a hard time with is building those relationships.
Yeah.
And generally speaking, sales engineers don't I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm trying to solve a problem.
Sure.
But you went from pre-sales into kind of a CRO role. The people know you're trying to sell them something.
Yeah.
How do you go about starting to build that relationship and help them understand that it's not just about selling at this point?
Yeah. I mean, I think along my career path, I sort of learned by doing that, people buy from people, and you could sort of tell on certain calls when you were having a great conversation and you felt like, hey, this is going really well, and this is just an easy conversation, and other times where it was just not that way and it was just a little bit harder. And so, you reflect on those meetings that didn't quite feel smooth and think, well, why was that? You know, what was going on? And maybe I was off on that day, or maybe the prospect I was talking to was just having a bad day, or we couldn't find a connection point or whatever. So some of it was just sort of learning by doing, but ultimately, you know, I do enjoy talking to people. I'm not like super extroverted. I'm a little bit more introverted, but I still try and enjoy the conversation. And I think also at that same time, you know, the last several years, I kind of got a little bit more into the, you know, mindfulness focus of like focusing on the present as opposed to always on the future outcomes or the past or things like that. And I think being present in the conversations also just helped me think about, all right, who am I talking to and why are we here? And how do we just be humans as opposed to anything else?
Yeah, I just switched headsets mainly because I can hear my kids playing outside, and it's not bothering you; it's bugging the life out of me. Which I guess happens when you work from home.
It does.
Yeah, and so you're kind of introverted. You're not extroverted. I talk to people, and they say, "Oh, when you're doing a discovery call, when you're meeting with customers, generally speaking, SEs get introduced to customers during a discovery call, and they say, oh, you have to discover their business problem, their technical problem, their personal life, their like culture within
Sure.
that company. You have to discover all that." And I'm thinking, like, when, right? Like, you go in one meeting, you barely have enough information to actually survive that meeting.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about, like, what do you, when you're first meeting a customer, what is it that you're trying to get out of that meeting that's beneficial to both of you?
Yeah. I mean, the primary objective for me is always just get that person to talk and tell me what's going on. I mean, usually I always say, look, I'm going to tell you all the great stuff that we do at Home Run. I'm really excited to show you the software, but hey, just tell me what's going on. Why are we here today? And sort of just leave it at that. And the more that person starts to talk, the more they're going to talk about their challenges and their pain points and the why now. And, you know, with some kind of careful guidance on some of that, you can help direct that conversation because they don't maybe always know what to say or sort of how to do it. I generally are some kind of technical things I always like to know about, like the sales tech stack and the pre-sales tech stack and some things like that. And I know there's a few things that I want to ask, and I'll make sure I ask them at the appropriate times. But for me, it still is about just having a conversation around pre-sales and how do you want to be better at pre-sales, and then ultimately how can we help. But it's not like there's like, you know, a formal checklist where I have to go, you know, from number 1 to number 27 in order. It's like you jump around and you just have a conversation and hope you've, you know, asked all the questions by the end.
I mean, if you have a checklist, that's a good way not build a relationship.
Yeah.
And like, you just send a checklist ahead of time and let them answer the questions. You don't even have to meet. But like you said, you just want them to talk. How do you? I know that you don't have a checklist, and maybe you don't have a system in mind. You just ask and they answer.
Yeah.
But how do you get them to actually talk? Because I work with engineers, right?
Yeah.
A lot of times engineers don't want to talk. Maybe
Yeah.
you're in a different industry, so it's a different experience. But how do you get them to actually start that 5-minute monologue or 2-minute monologue?
Sure. Well, this is something that I actually kind of learned during, you know, the pandemic and working from home and just being able to be at home. My wife's working at home from as well, and listening to how she's not in sales, she's not in tech, she's in the public health world, but listening to how she like runs her team meetings and meetings with the research partners that she works with and the stakeholders. And she's just really good at making everybody feel comfortable and welcome in that meeting. And so she'll, you know, start the conversation, and as people are coming in, she's welcoming everyone. Ramsey, welcome. How's it going? What happened last night? You know, all these just basic questions of just being a good human and just trying to make everybody feel comfortable that they're there and see what's going on. And then of course you'll get to the business of the day when the time's right. But just that environment that I watched her listen through the door, you know, her create, I was like, oh, okay, that's how you do it, right? And I kind of just started to adopt some of that, and it felt a little weird at first because it wasn't comfortable for me. That's not how I ran my meetings. I was very much like a little bit like get to the point kind of thing. But once I sort of just relaxed and said, all right, we're humans here, we're going to spend an hour together, let's chat, it just changed the tone of everything and made it easier for me too.
I love it and I hate it at the same time, mainly because you just highlighted something that I did wrong today, like a couple hours ago. Like, I had lunch, tired, I didn't feel like talking. I didn't set up the call, somebody else set up the call, and then he was driving at the same time.
Sure.
So he asked me to take lead. And we had 6 people from our end, and the first person joined from the customer side. And okay, thank you for joining. Are we waiting on anybody else? Yes. All right, how about I introduce myself when everybody's here?
Sure.
And
Yep.
then we proceeded to sit in silence for the next few minutes.
Yeah.
And I've been doing this for almost 10 years now. Well,
Yeah.
9 years. You'd think I know that. Ask them a question, right? It's just,
Yeah.
hey, who are you? What do you do? Why are you
Yeah.
here? Or what did you do last night?
Yeah.
So that part, I got better as the conversation went along.
Yeah.
But you just highlighted something that, like, you know what? Maybe I should have. I messed that one up, and that's
Well,
it's a
and
good thing.
it can be really, I mean, some of those conversations, especially if it's a new team that you haven't talked to before and you don't know anything about their personalities, it can be a little bit awkward for everybody. They may not even know why they're there, right? Sometimes they have very limited information, especially if you're waiting for like a manager to show up and it's the rest of the team or whatever. And so one of the things that I always do is, I mean, and I write about this on LinkedIn as well. Like I'm a little bit of an open book in terms of like bringing my own personal life into the work conversation. So if it feels like, all right, I ask, hey, I'm welcoming you, and you're, quiet, and you say, oh, thanks, and then you just sit there and don't say anything. And I say, oh, how are things going? And you say, oh, fine. Like, the kind of one-word answers. Okay, I'm kind of reading that situation, being like, all right, they're not proactively offering things up. Maybe they're distracted. Maybe it was a rough night. Who knows what the case is? I'm going to tell them about my trip to visit some friends down in Mexico City last week. They may not want to hear it, but I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to talk about this amazing coffee cafe we found and this coffee drink they put tonic water in with cold brew, which sounds gross, but it was delicious. Okay. And suddenly they're like, oh yeah, I've been to Mexico City once, or whatever the case is. But I sort of just start to babble a little bit and tell some fun personal stories, or fun or not, just some personal stories about what's going on. And that helps, I think. At least I think it does.
Yeah, I mean, so there's that option in my mind. I would think it's like, all right, maybe they just don't enjoy talking, and I should respect that and shut up, right? And you never know which, like, your method was probably better than shutting up, because at least you got them to say something.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I guess lesson, like, again, 9 years into this, and I'm still. That's why I love these podcasts, because I get to learn those sort of things. Maybe I should have some stories lined up in case of emergency, I guess.
Well, fortunately, we're back to like the theme of like humans being humans. As a human, you have stuff that has happened this morning and yesterday and the day before and over the weekend and with your kids and all kinds of stuff that ultimately you can pull from if you feel like there's sort of a little bit of an awkward pause. But to be friendly and welcoming, and sometimes people don't want to talk, and that's okay too. And
okay. All right, so you started actually, I love this. Maybe we'll go down that rabbit hole. You started the conversation, and they jump in. It's like, all right, we did this, we did that, and started the small talk. How do you keep them talking, or is it a challenge to keep them talking now that you're asking somewhat personal questions where you can discover their business needs, technical needs, culture, and all, who decision makers and all that?
I mean, I think a lot of times, especially if, these are sales calls, everybody there knows that this is a sales call. Maybe the first one, maybe the 10th one, everybody's aware of the situation. Nobody's surprised. Wait a minute, this is a sales call. So like they're expecting that you're going to ask some questions at some point in the process. And sometimes it might be a rapid fire 10 in a row. If that is part of your sales motion, like you need to get through that, and the call is the way you're going to do it, then tell them, look, I've got 10 questions. I'm going to go top to bottom through it, but this is really going to help me help you in the rest of this conversation, because it's going to help me understand the context, right? So whether it's setting some of those ground rules about what's about to happen in terms of the questioning, or whether it's the start with the big picture, tell them, I know we chatted about this already over email or on LinkedIn, but why don't you just tell me why we're here? What's been going on in your pre-sales world? And they'll start talking. And then it's asking questions, and then it's kind of linked back to things they said. So, I mean, I guess there's two parts. One is knowing how to ask those questions and not be so strict that I must go linearly through it. Because again, although I don't have a plan always, I know the things I need to ask. It's just trying to find the right time to ask it and see if they're going to offer it up before I even have to ask it. That way it is more of a conversation than a true Q&A.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's interesting, like, because we were talking about as sales engineers, sometimes we're afraid to ask questions like, oh, what if they don't want to answer? But you're right, they know why they're there. I mean,
Yeah.
some might not. I've been invited when I was just a lowly engineer. I've been invited into a meeting room just to fill in a seat.
Yeah.
And I had no idea what I was doing there, what product we're talking about, nothing. And at which
Mhm.
point I wouldn't be able to answer questions.
Yeah.
But if it's a vendor coming in to talk to you, more often than not, they know that we're going to be asking questions.
Yeah. I think sales engineers, I mean, in that way, if we're leading part of the discovery, and again, whether it's a discovery call or even if it's in the middle of a demo and I'm not sure what to show next, so I'm going to ask some questions, some probing questions to sort of see where you might want to go next. I think the sales engineers have the benefit of, you can be a little bit more like ask some questions to get the answers that you need, but context is everything. If you say, hey, it'll help me understand, if I understand your pre-sales tech stack and the tools that you're using today, that's going to help me show this or talk about this or whatever it is. Giving some context for where the question's coming from is an easy way to sort of ask some awkward questions or some very direct questions, because it's not coming out of left field at that point.
Yeah, like I don't know about every SE because I haven't obviously worked with every SE, but a lot of the SEs that I've worked with, they feel like their job is to simply ask the technical question,
Yeah.
or answer the technical question, where they're not even asking any questions. And
Okay.
part of our job is to build those relationships. I mean, I've developed friendships,
Yeah.
from meeting my customers. Like, I have a lot of friends that I genuinely enjoy.
Yeah.
But it didn't happen on day one.
Yeah.
And if we're not able to ask those questions, if we're afraid, we're never going to get there, and we're never going to get the juicy information about our competitors who no longer support them or something.
Sure.
Right? But like, what is your advice to people, to SEs who just sit there and either ask the technical questions in bullet point format, or are just waiting for them, like for their salesperson to look at them and say, all right, ask your questions?
Yeah. Well, I think in the cases where you've got those like dual roles and sometimes multiple roles on your side, okay, I've got my account executive, I'm the SE, and maybe there's some other people. That comes down to like the preparation before the call and having a good relationship, not with your prospect yet, but with your team and your account executive. What role do you need me to play in this meeting? Do you want me to, am I just the technical person and you've got everything else handled? Do you want me to try and build a little bit more of a relationship? Do you want me to be proactive and ask things? Or, I mean, I think figuring out that sort of routine and the role somebody's going to play on a call will certainly help. I think that should be done always. Otherwise, it's unclear. I don't want to step on toes, and maybe you were going to ask it later and you had a plan as my AE and I didn't know that. So I sort of jumped and asked the question earlier, and now you're a little bit annoyed. Now the tones suddenly switch. I mean, it can go out of control pretty quickly. But I think if you know the roles and if you've got a good internal relationship, then it's easier to be on that call, because I certainly have had AEs that I've worked with where they know every cue and I know every one of their cues. And if they start talking over me, I know that's my cue just to sit back and let them take over. And if I cut in, they know that I'm doing it for a very specific reason, not just because. And so they know to be quiet then, and things like that, or how to defer to each other. And
Okay. So one thing I heard is build internal relationships before building external relationships. Is that an accurate statement?
100%. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I've always, obviously, I think I'm stating the obvious. I've always worked better, even with bad salespeople that I had a good relationship with, than with good salespeople that I had a bad relationship with. So, okay.
Well, and also part of that is you may not, look, it happens. You may not like that other person. Just the personalities don't get along. You're not going to be friends outside of work. That's okay. But if you know your roles and you know the sort of context and the tone you want to have on whatever call it is at whatever stage in the sales cycle, remove the uncertainty of those roles and responsibilities, and it's going to go smoothly. It's the uncertainty that gets in the way. I don't know what you want. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Nobody knows. And then suddenly we're sort of stuck with who should talk and who should do what and what's the goal. And then you're trying to chat on the side and everybody's frustrated. So even if you don't mesh well, that's okay, but remove the uncertainty. I think that's important.
And in terms of like going back to the external relationships, in terms of after the first meeting, what's their expectation in terms of the relationship built? Like, is there a relationship yet? Would you consider there's a relationship yet, or is it a budding relationship? Where are you on the relationship spectrum, or at least your expectation is?
I mean, in the world of pre-sales, I think we always talk about, the goal of being that trusted advisor, right? That's sort of like the SE as sales engineers, we all aspire to get that, informal designation at some point in the sales cycle. And we sort of like that. Let the AE do the schmoozy side of it. We're going to be the trusted advisor that they can trust what we say, and they know they can listen to us. And you do that through technical knowledge, right? If you don't have the technical knowledge, then they're not going to really trust that you're telling them that, hey, we can do that, and they don't really believe you. So technical knowledge has to be there, but then also just that personal knowledge. So we're back to humans being humans. And if you actually sort of like talking with me, and I have fun stories, or I ask you about, your kids or whatever the case is, suddenly you've got technical knowledge and sort of a personal relationship that's starting to build out. And I know we've chatted about this, over the last year, but like, you're also not friends with that person yet, right? It's a sales cycle. So you probably don't know them. So it is a budding relationship. You may never be friends either, but if you show genuine interest, and at least the way I always think about it is, if it's important to you, then it's important to me, right? Because we're trying to find ways to connect, and my product and my technical knowledge is part of it, but also things we might have in common or things that are important. It is a way to build that relationship and build that trust, just as humans.
What's important to you is important to me. Not if you buy from me, whatever is important to you, maybe or may not be important to me. I like that. Yeah, I mean, I tend to take notes. If someone tells me that they have kids, I write it down. Like I have 3 kids. I don't always remember. I don't even always remember where I wrote it down. But the intention is for me to like write it down, because that person went through the trouble of actually telling me this. It must be important.
Yeah.
Let's write it down. And then we'll chat about it. Some other, like, this is the first meeting. The second meeting, I'll ask like, hey, did you guys go skiing? You were planning on going skiing last time. And I've talked to SEs who tell me, well, this is manipulative. Right. What are your thoughts around that?
I mean, I don't think there's any, I pay very close attention, and I posted about this on LinkedIn last week or even earlier this week. I don't remember when it was, but about kind of, again, paying attention to what's important to the people that you're talking to, and then make sure you write it down, because you're not going to remember. You're jumping between calls. And if it's important to them, then it's important to you. And I don't think it's manipulative. Like, I don't remember stuff. I have so much going on in my work life and my personal life and a million different deals I'm juggling and a million different people. I would love to remember everything. I wish I had a photographic memory. I don't remember things. So if I don't write it down, it's gone by tomorrow, if not by the end of the day. So I use it just so I say, all right, what are my key highlights? What do I want to remember? I don't always pull them out and use them every single time, but like on occasion, I'll be, somebody said they like 80s music on a call, right? Good, I got that down. And then so later on, I'll hear some fun 80s song on the radio and be like, oh, I just thought of that person. And I'll ping them on LinkedIn and be like, hey, I was just listening to this song, and I remember, you mentioned that as well. And like, just a little bit of a relationship builder. And it's also fun, just talking to somebody.
Yeah, I mean, you would do that with your friends, right?
Yeah.
I know you're not friends yet. Maybe someday you will be. But how did you become friends with anybody if you didn't do that? Right?
Yeah.
Is it manipulation or caring? I mean, if you're doing it for the sake of manipulation, I guess it's all about the intention, right? I don't know if you agree with that, but like, if my intention is to manipulate you, then yes, it is manipulative.
And I think that's, of course, with information comes power, and you can use it to manipulate. And like in a sales cycle, we're all trying to get to the goal of getting somebody to buy whatever product and service we have. But I think building a relationship with another person, whether that's your end goal is, hey, I want to build a good relationship so they trust me, so they buy from us, that's okay. If your goal is also to kind of befriend somebody professionally, that's fine too. I don't think either one of those are manipulative. It's still just building a relationship. At least that's the way I look at it and the way I do it.
Yeah, I mean, there's the intention, right? Like, I'm just using you right now so I can get my end goal. Then I don't care about you. But I haven't met a single SE who thinks like that.
Yeah,
right? I may have met some salespeople who think like that, but it's the minority too.
Yeah.
So if you think if you think you're being manipulative because you care, then I think that's a you problem. But generally speaking, like I've had customers there, they call me and said, like, hey, I'm late to my thing because my car broke down and I'm
Yeah.
5 minutes away. I can go help. Is that manipulative or is it helpful?
Sure.
So, okay. And
Well, I kind of related to that, I think the pandemic has changed the ways the sales, the interactions during the sales cycle. And I think for the better personally, maybe others would disagree with this, but the fact that more people were working from home and, did have kids or dogs barging in the background, sometimes hilariously and sometimes, semi inappropriately, whatever. But like the fact that that did happen, or, somebody, whatever, doesn't blur their background and they're sitting in a closet quite literally with all their clothes around them or whatever it is, we became a little bit more human in the sales cycle, as opposed to it was always like the formal dress wear and like the formal conference room. And, there's reasons for that and times for that. But I like that. I feel like people just became a little bit more human, and they'd be like, look, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to leave for 5 minutes because my kid's in the background. I have to go check something out. And like, that's totally okay. Nobody blinks twice at that anymore. And like, yeah, of course, go deal with your kids. No problem. I'll wait.
yeah, sorry, I had to put my headphones on because my kids keep screaming in the background. I've actually got my kids on calls and it was fun. For me, actually, I feel like being on Zoom all the time hindered my relationships with my customers personally, because I used to go. So I'm in a different situation where my customers are 20 minutes away from me.
Okay.
And
Yep.
they were all in the office and I had badge access to visit every single one of them. So I just show up and sit behind them and we'll just chat for 30 minutes. So I guess it's beneficial and not, but well, I wouldn't want to say COVID is beneficial, but there was some good things that came out of it, and there were some.
It changed things a little bit, and for the remote selling. And look, I love being in person, and I think even one in-person interaction during a sales cycle makes a huge difference. This is another thing that I kind of watch my wife do her work, and with her research colleagues and partners. And a lot of times she'll go travel, to wherever they might be at, and she'll do it maybe even over a weekend or something. And they don't do a lot of work talk during that. They'll go out to dinner, they'll go for a walk, they'll do all kinds of stuff. And it's just literally building the relationship. And like they'll chat about work stuff, but the most important stuff, she always says, the most important stuff happens during the meals and the breaks, not always during the meetings. And that's true. It's harder to do that remotely. It's easier when you're in person because you're just, once again, you're humans being humans. You're eating some food, enjoying whatever you're eating and enjoying the sunshine outside and just chatting about life and what's going on. And that's when stories about kids and pets and travel come up.
Yeah. I mean, I'm in Ottawa, so no sunshine, but I get your point. Is there a target? Like, hey, I have to have 5 customer meals in a week, or is it just whatever happens?
I don't know what her plans are like when she does it. I mean, I think they very carefully schedule all that stuff out. I haven't done some work travel, since pandemic started, and I really do miss it. And I think things are starting to open up. But also, every time I want to go travel to do an in-person meeting or an in-person demo, most likely everybody on that call, they're in 10 different places. So it's almost hard. Even if you offer up, hey, I'll come see you, they're like, yeah, well, we're in 10 different places, so no point.
Yeah. And that's the problem that I'm facing. Even though we're all in Ottawa, they're not all in the office, but it's easier to meet up. Right? Like, hey, can we go? We'll grab lunch, and I can attest to that. And this is something I'm struggling with, and maybe you can help. Like, I got so efficient during COVID, right? We had meetings. I didn't have to drive anywhere. I didn't have to, it was just done. And now I'm struggling to get myself to go visit customers.
Sure.
Because, well, it's a 20 to 30 minute drive, depending on traffic, one way and then back. That's 1 hour's worth of work that I could be doing a million things in that 1 hour. I don't know why I'm telling you this. I'll just pause here. Hear your thoughts. Maybe you can help me psychologically.
I mean, I think everybody struggles with that right now of like, okay, that 20 minutes, that 1 hour, what else could I be doing with it? But also, I think in those cases, and you'll be selective when you do it, it's, yes, you could be doing other things, but it is an investment in the relationship, right? So I think the context switching from I have to go drive through traffic to see them to I'm investing 20 minutes to get to go see them definitely changes the perspective a little bit. And it's like, all right, this is a worthwhile use of my time versus those other things because that relationship is important.
Right. I love that. Change the way you view things.
Yeah.
You're saying way too many gems today. I'm gonna have to go over that in this video. And I'm like, yeah, no, it's okay. How many meetings? This is the stupidest question I've ever asked. How many meetings before you're friends with someone? I prefaced it by being a stupid question. So
Yeah. Well, then I'll give the classic sales engineering answer.
It depends. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I mean, if you take it outside the work context, same thing. How many times do you have to meet somebody before you think, oh, this person and I could be friends? Sometimes you meet somebody and in the first 30 seconds, you're already laughing and being like, ah, we're going to be best friends. I can already tell. And other times you're like, I don't know, I'm not getting a good vibe off this person. And then the next time it's the same. And the third time you're like, oh, we connected on something, and it takes a while. So it's the same with the work relationships.
Is it okay not to be friends with someone or the customer?
I definitely think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a struggle of mine. Like, why? Well, I guess it's a struggle of a lot of people. Being an introvert, I can make friends with some, and some I just don't click with. It could be that we're both introverts and we're just not able to actually have a conversation, or it could be for a million reasons, and it's okay. Like, right, they will still buy from you. Yeah. Okay.
You can still, I mean, because you can still build a relationship and you can still understand what they're trying. If then it becomes a little bit more of a sales relationship and a professional relationship, that's fine. And if there's something personal that's still important to them, is still going to be important to you. It just may not be the person that you would go to meet up with outside of the work relationship, and or that's okay.
And yeah, there are some customers that I struggle to actually go and meet in person, and that's something that I'm working on and trying to find something that I like about them. We'll get there one day. I know you mentioned your brother is also a sales engineer.
Mm-hmm.
Do you get competitive? Like, is there a competition between you two about who? Like, I don't know how sales engineers compete, but generally speaking, like,
I mean, we're brothers, so we kind of compete on everything. We always say we compete like brothers and fight like brothers and love each other like brothers, and we have a great relationship that way. But yeah, there's always a little bit of hey, I did this, well, I did that too, and oh, I did this, well, I did that better, that kind of stuff. But we're also, as we've gotten older, we've also, I don't know, our mindsets have switched to more of that respect as well, of like, hey, I'm just going to say congratulations this time, well done, and just leave it at that. I don't need to kind of give my version of that same thing. I just want to celebrate what he's doing, and vice versa. So maybe it just comes with age and I don't know, some maturity, I suppose.
Good. So, Brian, we're about to get into the not so fire round. I just want to make sure. Is there any question you were hoping I was going to ask you, which I did not?
I mean, no, not so far. I mean, you didn't ask about my pets or my hobbies or my travel or anything that might be important to me, I guess.
Well, hey, so Brian, tell me about your pets and your travel. And what was the last one?
I don't even know, hobbies, I suppose.
Do you have pets?
I've got one cat, an orange tabby cat named Buddy.
Okay. I want a picture of that cat, and we can put her on the show notes later.
Definitely.
Any hobbies?
I do a lot of outdoor stuff, running, hiking. I love art, cartooning and drawing and painting and that kind of stuff. Yeah, those are kind of the main things lately.
Do you find that helpful in doing pre-sales? I'm curious because there's a lot of storytelling, and I feel like for cartooning, you're doing the storytelling, you're envisioning something in your mind. So I'm just curious if you find it helpful.
Yeah, I think for me, the balance of like the art and the science kind of things, like in my entire life, I've always had the very artistic side and music, and like I played instruments, so I played like tuba and trombone, which is great. But then I love the marching band side of it because it added like science and precision to the music and the art side of it. And even in my own art, when I'm doing it, I love the creative side of it, but I also like a lot of precision in my work. So I always see that balance between art and science, or art and technical. which of course as a sales engineer is like a perfect combination, the technical side of it and a little bit of the art and the sort of free sales side of it has, I think, served me pretty well.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get into the not so. I'm not going to ask you again because you're going to make me look bad. I thought your job was to make me look good. All right. This is let's finish this on a high.
All right.
These are the same 4 questions I ask almost every guest, and I would love to hear your thoughts. What do you love about pre-sales now that you're not only in that world, you're selling into that world as well?
It's that last point. I think the balance of the technical and kind of the art side of it. I just think that to be able to go back and forth and find the right tone and mode in any given meeting, in any given deal, I love that.
And question number 2, beyond cartooning and being precise and artistic, what do you think is your superpower?
It is when it comes to professional stuff, it is definitely that I'm left-handed, because I can run a demo with my mouse in my right hand and I can be taking notes with my left hand at the same time.
Is that really what you think your superpower is? Like,
yeah, it definitely
okay. It helps. All right, good to know. I never even thought about that.
Yeah.
Like, all right. I thought you would use your mouse with the left hand.
No. Oh, I don't know. Maybe some people do. I just always use the right because it was always on the, I don't know, everybody else uses it on the right. So that's just how I learned it.
I guess I need to learn how to write with my left hand. All right. The third question is there any book or resource you would recommend for people who want to be better sales engineers?
I mean, yes, there's a whole bunch of them that everybody could name. But I would actually say no, because I do feel like the best learning that I've ever done is sort of just the learn by doing. I mean, take all the books and take all the learnings, but then when you actually apply it, that's way better than anything anybody can tell me.
So just do it. Okay.
Just do it.
Last question of the day. Is there a habit, well, last question of the not so fire round. Is there a habit you're working on today to improve in your personal or professional life?
Yeah, yes. Being mindful and kind of mindfulness in general. I think this maybe comes with my older age, about being more present in my conversations and in the activities that I'm doing. And, in the world of social media and text messages and Slack messages and all the distractions, just trying to say, if I'm doing this activity, let me be focused on that activity and enjoy that activity right now. Because I don't know what's going to happen in, the next, couple of minutes, or let alone the next, couple of days. Over the years, I've had health issues with, cancer that I beat in my younger years and stuff like that, where it's led me to just being, all right, you don't know what the future holds, so enjoy this moment right now. It's not easy because there are tons of distractions, but being mindful is a big one.
Nice. All right. Brian, you've been working on Home Run. You mentioned it a couple of times. Do you want to plug it? Do you want to explain a little bit what it does, or where people can connect with you if they want to learn more? Would absolutely love to.
So Home Run Pre-Sales is the company, Home Run's the product. It's designed to be the pre-sales workplace that gets you through your day. One place to track and manage and inform all of your pre-sales efforts. If you want to find out more, you can hit me up on LinkedIn or go to homerunpresales.com and check it out there.
Nice. Thank you so much for your time, Brian. This was lots of fun. Hopefully we're friends by the end of it.
I think so.
Soon. Cool.
All right. Thank you very much.
And that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you for listening. I really appreciate that. Let me know your thoughts. What are some of the things that you do to build relationships with your customers? Do you do small talk at the beginning of a Zoom call? Do you like to visit in person? What is it that you do that could be unique? It might not be unique. It might be just reinforcing something we already know, but that's also good. So again, I am your host. I was your host, Ramzi Majaba. And with that, I'm signing off.